Hi, everybody, and welcome to my webinar here for VALD. I am really excited to have been asked to be part of this project and can't thank the people at VALD enough for thinking of me and when they were putting these together. My name is DeMayo. I am the head strength and conditioning coach for basketball at the University of Richmond in Richmond, Virginia, in the United States. I'm also the owner of Central Virginia Sport Performance, which is kind of most commonly and playfully known as CVASPs. But today, I'd really like to talk a bit about, bringing our athletes back and what our plan is when we're talking about preparing our athletes for return to sport. And we're going to call this a change of perspective because I think that right now what we're seeing is a lot of people talking about different things and different scenarios and situations that we're in and we're looking at that are going to be happening in the future. And I think that if we take a step back, we might be able to find some better ways of just doing what we do. But I think before we get into that, one thing that's really important is for all of y'all out there that are watching to kind of understand where I'm coming from with this. Working in college basketball, we were really right in the middle of all this. That second week of March was really a crazy time. It started with the Ivy League stopping their conference tournament, saying that they weren't going to play, and people thinking that all of this was just kind of this small little thing that really was getting blown out of proportion. And then all the stuff with Rudy Gobert happened, and the NBA shut down, and then basically everything went from there. Our conference tournament shut down. We were in the heart of Brooklyn, New York, in the middle of the city, on our way to walk to practice when we found out. And, we then are told, all right, just go back up, we'll pack, we're going to head home and hopefully have the NCAA tournament, when in fact they canceled that on our ride to the airport. So really, I think everybody that was involved in the world of basketball can relate to one really awesome scene in a movie.
You don't know who you messing with. We're not that young. Which one of y'all kicked me?
Because we all felt like Chris Tucker. We didn't really understand what happened or where things were going or what was up or what was down. And that's just not the coaches, obviously the players as well. And it was really an absolutely unique, scary, petrifying, every emotion you could think of time. And then that led us into heading back to Richmond, Virginia, getting off the plane. And really, everyone kind of since then being in a different form of panic mode for a while. We sat there at first and we were like, oh my gosh, we got to get these kids home. And oh my gosh, what about the internationals? And then it was, oh my gosh, everybody on social media everywhere was completely and absolutely petrified, right? Because they're going to lose all their gains because they don't have a weight room. What are we going to do? We've got to get programs out and bodyweight programs and teach them how to load backpacks and do all these crazy things so that we don't lose all our gains. And then that turned into kind of the second run of like fear almost with what we do in our small little niche in sport. And that was, but what are we going to do when they come back? We've got to be so afraid of sport coaches breaking them, and how can we make sure that they don't do too much too fast, and how are we going to protect them and save them from the coaches and do all of these things. And now, don't get me wrong, I don't think we're going to be able to come back and treat college basketball players like we would have if they would have come back this Monday, right? If they would have come back the third Monday in May like they normally do after having 3 weeks off, I don't think we can treat them the same way when we start practice. I do think we're going to need to take some baby steps and move forward. But I also think that at the same time, there are some things that we also need to take into account. And that is where I'm going to ask you to change your perspective a little bit. I'm going to ask you to kind of bear with me and kind of listen to a couple of things that we've been talking about and go from there. And if you want to exit the matrix and stop worrying about what may happen and start focusing on the now, then great. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments and criticisms at the end of some of these things. If not, and you think that the only thing we need to worry about is how we can, change practice and protect people later, then that's fine too. And I do think that there are some really, really strong and valid reasons to have that. But what I want to get into first, right, is understanding that, Dr. Bondarchuk and his classifications of exercises sometimes are like super sexy and super cool, but then other times they kind of like fall by the wayside. And there are some coaches right now that are doing some sensational things with this. But I want to just look at this idea here when we're talking about college basketball. College basketball, for the most part, has been done where we have been practicing for 11 months out of the year, more or less. So really, the ability to go down into that general preparatory exercise and really build the base and the foundation and the general prep level with these young people has been very challenging because they've always been practicing. They've always been in the middle of individuals, which is going to be a lot of specific developmental and specific preparatory exercises. But now, after we've had this now going into 8 weeks off, starting this coming Monday from when this is recorded, we have an opportunity for them, before they would plan on returning to campus this summer, to have a 6-week general preparation period where they may not have access to a court, where they may not be running up and down and playing basketball. So then if we now compare these two ideas, we have our preparation period now where we can really build our general preparatory exercises. And then we can work our way into specific preparatory and specific developmental exercises with individuals in practice, and then start building in competitive exercises in full practice with the team in order to get into games and the event, as Dr. Bondarchuk built this. But when we take a step back and we really look at this, I think that one thing that we, especially in college basketball, have started to take away from ourselves is the building of each block from below the block above it. What do I mean by that? Well, we all now really love to talk about reverse engineering the game, right? And breaking down what the game demands are and building on what the game demands are and looking at different metrics and models to understand how we can better prepare the athletes for the game. But what if we take a step back right now, knowing that we've had 8 weeks off? So these young people have had plenty of time to heal, plenty of time to recover, plenty of time to feel better. And now we know what this first day of workouts is going to look like. And we now have 6 weeks to reverse engineer what that is to build up to that point. Then we have 6 weeks of these individuals to build them up so that they're able to come back and go through full workouts when they start this fall semester. Then, during those workouts in fall semester, we have about 6 to 8 weeks to build them up so they're ready for practice. Now, one thing that makes this going from practice to individuals so hard is that usually when we do this in college, what we're going to see is that there is a time allotment that we're allowed it from 8 to 20 hours. So during that individual preparatory period, right, where they're doing individual instruction only, we need to build different qualities where the athlete then will be able to handle 20 hours of a workload a week. That basically has been what we've been doing for the past 8 years, is building in to be ready for practice. But we haven't been able to necessarily have this preparation time because there has never been a time where they haven't been practicing and training at the same time. This is it. This is the first chance we've had. And I think that we have a really unique opportunity here to develop a more robust and a more versatile player that's going to be able to handle these stressors and manage the game in a better way. So what we did, we being one of our assistants and my sports medicine practitioner, we sat down and we basically were like, yo, what is day one practice going to look like? How are we going to look at this? How are we going to evolve to build to this? And what do we need to get to make sure that they're most prepared to do it? Well, here's basically the breakdown that we came up with. And this is really kind of just a simple breakdown of what we believe to be most important for the development of these young people so they are ready for our individual instruction that is hopefully starting near the late part of June. These athletes need to obviously have some form of strength and motor control. And how we were looking at that is, first and foremost, they need to be able to hold positions, right? Long duration isometrics and yielding isometrics and, different forms of holding positions has become something that's been really sexy of late. But we're looking at this really in just one way. We're looking at these isometric exercises as, are we able to hold specific positions and do we have the mobility that we need to be able to get into specific positions that we deem important to the preparation of the player to be ready for individuals? Can they get into a split stance, lower their body, get super low, keep their heel floating and up so that they're able to hold that spot? Do they have the mobility in their big toe? Do they have the flexibility in their hips and their hip flexors to get down there and not have to round their back? Can they hold those positions? Can they get their feet out wide, point their toes about at 45 degrees, sit like they're sitting in a chair, push their knees out, and get in a real good low defensive stance and hold it? Because we have to be able to own the position before we load the position, right? Which then gets us into performing oxidative or tempo work. And if you followed anything that the late Dr. Victor Selyunov or Val Nezdakin have spoken about, this tempo method, or the oxidative squats, if you may, are keeping constant tension on the muscle, moving 2 counts up, 2 counts down for 10 repetitions. But basically, once we've been able to own these positions, can we get in and out of them in a controlled manner, right? Can we sit into that squat and stand up out of that squat? Can we sit into that squat and stand out of that squat without having to be herky-jerky and like dropping in there and super heavy to get our hips down? How can we handle this and do this so that we are able to load it in a safe manner and get into the positions that are required? And then some form of jumping, right? Can we get out of that position fast? Can we continually get in and out of that position and increase the speed at which we do it, right? That, to me, seems like a very simple and common sense progression. But as we get into more jumping and power development, can we hold those positions, right, and get out of it, just to get up and push? Can we push from these spots that we need to push and push vertically, push forward, push laterally? Can we do those things? Can we do extensive short and long coupling jumps? And the extensive method is one that I believe, one of Verkhoshansky's methods that is, in my opinion, the most overlooked and underappreciated. And Dr. Natalia Verkhoshansky has talked about this quite extensively at our events, where you're able to, as she has said, you can jump as though you're playing like a child. You can repeat these methods extensively, right? For a very long time. The key with these jumps is to do them while you're relaxed, because we know that most reactions and actions in sport can't be done in a really tensed up manner, right? Like, you don't sprint, change direction, and make good decisions when you're all bound up. So can we get into those positions and out of them? And can we improve our outputs by being relaxed and allowing ourselves to enhance the use of the stretch shortening cycle in them? And then can we get intensive-ish with it? Now, the intensive method when it comes to jumping, if you follow Verkhoshansky's teachings, is something that is max effort, right? It is as intense as possible, but it's also measurable. And I don't think that asking these young people to take out different measuring devices is probably going to be feasible when they're at home. But if they can, super. If they can't, we're just going to try to get them to jump as high or long or far or as many as fast as possible. because we need to increase the intensity of the activity so that we can increase the stress of the activity. We also need to talk about getting into higher velocity movements. And this is something that, again, it's become more and more sexy of late when we're talking about ways, especially now, right? Especially now, because people are talking about, well, if all you can do is jump and sprint, like you're in a good spot because of the limitations that most people have when it comes to their ability to train. But if we look at this right now, we're trying to prepare them to get into practice where they are going to be doing some full court running. Okay, so how can we build the tissue so that they're able to get into these situations where they can run hard and run fast and do it over again? Well, getting into some build-ups like walk-in 10s where we're building up that way, or some simple like build-up 20s where they're actually building up for a little longer distance before we get into some accelerations and starts. And I think that it's important to not skip that step because there is so much violence in that start and that general acceleration that I think those buildups, and this is all anecdotal, I have no proof of this, but I really do feel that those buildups do provide a really good stepping stone to get into starts, 10s, and things of that nature, and then getting into longer sprints. And listen, I get it. Like basketball players don't ever hit max velocity, and having them run longer durations so they do hit max velocity may not be the most quote unquote functional or specific thing. But what do we know about raising someone's ability to hit max V? If they can run faster, they accelerate better. Basketball is a game of stopping, changing direction, and accelerating in multiple directions. If you can accelerate better, you should get out of things quicker, be faster, beat your opponent, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to waste your time telling you about all that, but that's why we get to that. And then we talk about lateral movement because basketball really is somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 played side to side and backwards. So how are we going to build into this? Again, following some of what Verkhoshansky has spoken about, what Yuri's teaching was and what Dr. Natalia Verkhoshansky has shown with some of her work with CVASPs is that we want to build the linear and the vertical so that we can build the strength and the power outputs in the general to get to the specific of the lateral movement. So while we're building all of these other qualities, we're going to work on our technical aspects of how we move side to side. And that's going to start with the whole idea of pushing and pushing from base and getting into how we can build up slowly into like simple defensive slides. After that, it's going to be into certain exercises where they're simple just pushing back from a return. So like pushing to the left twice and then pushing back to the right once. And then getting into multiple, what we call in basketball, flips, right? Where you're doing a defensive slide or a shuffle backwards at an angle for a few steps and then opening up your hips and going in the other direction. And doing this repeatedly. But again, all of this is progressing along with these other key components. But then really one key component to the game of basketball and to being able to survive these workouts, survive's the wrong word, but I think you understand what I mean, is building a robust and strong energy system to build upon, right? We know that the aerobic system is going to be vital to them being able to come back and repeat these bouts the next day. So tempo is a great way to do it. Extensive tempo, having them cover certain distances, right? And building into that we have a gradual increase in directions or change of direction. So we start out straight ahead, we move into 1 or 2 changes of direction, 3 or 4 changes of direction, and then we build in more what we would call sport-specific or basketball-specific type movements. Again, keeping the idea of tempo though, right? Where it's not max effort, but we're moving at a good pace that we can repeat. And when we're talking about specific movements here, we're talking about things like closeouts. We're talking about things like defensive slides. We're talking about things like backpedaling, different movements of that sort. And we want to build upon this as we go. And then all of these, right, they all play together. Being able to hold and build these positions leads directly into how we can perform the jumps. Building that tempo and that oxidative squat emphasis is going to play right into our energy system work as we start to strengthen those fibers and build more of that resilience to fatigue. It'll piggyback right in with the tempo work. Building the technique of the lateral movement is going to end out helping us get better as we change direction and get specific movements into the energy system work. And of course, when we start talking about the jumping and power work and the higher velocity stuff, what we know, right, is the faster that you can move and the faster you can accelerate, the more speed reserve you have, the less work you have to produce to get to certain speeds, therefore improving your body's efficiency, therefore allowing you to work at a higher level in the tempo work to increase blah, blah, blah. Here we go. You guys understand where I'm getting at. So this is where the whole thing is. And the reason I'm showing y'all this way is because I don't want to insult your education level and your intelligence and say, oh, I'm going to walk through each exercise step by step. If you want to, I'm leaving it attached to this presentation. And there's going to be videos with it. Hopefully, if I don't mess that up right, they'll all be hyperlinked in. But really, this is how the week is going to go. Is we're going to have our strength motor control day, our speed power tolerance prep day, and then our aerobic development progressing towards the sport demands. And this really, again, if you follow what Dr. Selyunov taught and what Val Mazdakin has spoken about, follows pretty closely to their periodization model, where we're going to have our first day, which is going to be more of the hormonal stimulus, the glycolytic stimulus, really getting that spike to lead into our more intensive aerobic work, our more high-speed work that is going to help build those outputs and the power and the velocities that we can get to, along with manipulating those rest intervals so we're able to repeat them as well, right? As long as we're not sitting here and treating it too far one way or the other, it's going to help increase our speed outputs with the aerobic work as well. And then following that with more of an extensive aerobic day with the tempo work. And again, I'm not going to get too far into all that. There's a lot of really great information out there. Obviously, we do have a lot of it on our site when it comes to listening to what Val Mazdakin has talked about with that and this periodization model, but also what the late Victor Selyunov Victor Selyunov spoke on when it comes to these methods. But again, I'm going to attach the workouts and everything, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence and have you walk through it step by step, because I think that would be rude and I don't want to waste your time. But if you do want to take a look at it, I'd love to have you tear it apart, just like that Carol Baskins did, throw it right in there with the Tigers, allegedly threw in there with the Tigers, and tell me what you think, because I think that what we've been able to do is really reverse engineer what that first day of practice is. And what I'm hoping is that maybe this will spark some thoughts and some different ideas with some of you out there to help you not just yourself prepare your athletes better for what they need to be ready for, but if you'd be so kind and to share that with us too, we would greatly appreciate it. Because as I've said with everything that we're doing in CVASPs right now, this is a great time for us to learn, grow, and share. And the biggest part of that is sharing. What can we do to make sure that we're going to be better and doing better and growing to be better for the athletes that we get to work with every day? Now, I also want to point out that I am not against the idea of being more involved with practice and helping educate coaches and building kind of step-by-step programs to get these people back to where they quote-unquote were, if that's what we want to say it as, or so that we can progress in a more sound and realistic manner so that the athlete is progressing safely and getting better, and again, all of those great things. I'm all for it. We're doing that too. We're building these models and programs and ideas that we can do to help be better for the guys. But we are also strength and conditioning coaches. It is our job to help these athletes become the most robust and stress-resilient individuals that they possibly can be. And at the present moment, we are at a very unique and excellent time where we can do just that. So that's what we're trying to do, is best prepare them by building these qualities, by hoping that we elicit. And that's what we're trying to do by building these qualities and progressing in the manner that we are for these 6 weeks, so that we can make sure that we're doing best by the people that we are serving with this program. So I'd love to hear your pros, your cons, your what is this to the program. And I'd love to chat more with y'all about it. So if you check it out, it should be below. Again, I can't thank everybody at VALD enough for having me involved. This is really an awesome project, and they've got some absolutely sensational practitioners that I can't even imagine I would have ever seen my name next to. So this is truly humbling, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. And I'm hoping that, y'all took at least one thing from this, even if it was just a laugh or two, to help yourself be a better practitioner and do better by the athletes that you get to work with every day. And I truly appreciate y'all spending the time with me. I hope you are safe and doing well in this time. And I look forward to the time when we can get back to just arguing over sets and reps and why we need to just squat and not Olympic lift and only need to sprint and things of that nature that are so trivial that it don't matter in the real world that we live in today. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. We will talk soon.